Okay, thank you. Let's see, Mike's on, so I think everybody's here. Everybody ready? I'd like to call the meeting for the work session for tonight's Common Council to order. This is an opportunity for us to spend a little bit of an extended time discussing items in the agenda that you'd like to draw out and asking or forwarding any questions to the department heads or any other participants you may want to ask as well. So please.
I guess I have a question, and it's probably, I think, more towards you, Becky. With the resolution about the march, you were going to work with, try to find a solution or work with...
Yeah, that needs to still be on the table. I spoke to Kelly, and she's connecting with Butterfly Blaze, who's the Title IX coordinator at the college, to try to work with UP. So, well, just haven't figured out all of that yet. So we're not ready to talk to anything now.
Okay, thank you.
Leave her where she lies for the moment.
Yes, let it lie.
I guess I can speak to a couple of items. As you saw, we've added at kind of late notice the parking study. We're ready to go out for and approve the individual consultants that can answer our questions for the parking study. As you recall, we have a grant for that. We're allowed to pay up to $60,000. The contractor that was rated the highest amongst 4 people that ranked the various proposals did end up coming just a bit under the $60,000. I can certainly share with you the winning proposal or all the proposals if you like to look at them. I'm very pleased with the quality of the proposals. And all the teams ranked 2 of the contractors higher than the rest, and most of the teams ranked the contractor we recommend higher than the rest as well. So it was almost unanimous, but all of them ranked that winning contractor in the top 2 categories. Now recall that this grant from ESD is for $20,000. We're required to make up the difference, and the discussion had been to draw that from the parking fund because obviously we're looking for a downtown parking solution, so it wouldn't actually come from the general fund, which I'm sure would concern us all if it was. The timeline for this, we hope to contract, subject to your approval, immediately. We're about a week and a half or so behind because by the time we contract, it's going to be sometime next week. We're really hoping to start on August, early August, late July on this. We'd like to have this completed by mid-October. The contractors, proposers felt that that's a little bit ambitious scale, which may have to be a little bit flexible. But of course we need that piece of information resolved before we go to the next step of trying to find the parking solution for downtown. And until we have an idea of what we're going to do with parking downtown, it kind of holds us up in the whole redevelopment of Durkee Street. We need to be able to say to the contractors or the developers for Durkee Street confidently, put in your proposals, we're taking care of the parking spaces for you. So there's a lot of things that depend on the success of this parking study. What made me feel very good about the company, or especially the top 2 companies that proposed this, is they've got a lot of experience not only doing these studies, but also building parking garages, expanding parking lots, using technologies for parking metering, for pricing structures, etc., doing public surveys to see if the public even wants any of these things. So we really felt that either of these 2 companies can answer a lot of unresolved questions out there that aren't going to have easy answers for. Please.
Do they ask for direction when we consult? Do they ask where do you want to go, or do they tell us where to go, or and will they be given any particular direction?
In the RFP, we signal what problem we're trying to solve, and we give them an outline of some of the possible things that we would want them to look at. And each one of these 2 winning bids really address those. Well, if you went in this direction, we've got expertise here, we can give you advice here, et cetera. I felt it's pretty important to really let them know the full extent of the problem, just not say, we need a parking study done, and I wanted them to understand why, and a number of cars we'd have to relocate, the history of parking downtown, et cetera. Because I think if they have a more informed proposal, they're gonna give us a much more informed answer. But they'll actually, as part of the proposal, and all the 4 groups did this as part of the RFP process, they'll be actually coming to town, holding public forums, doing surveys, all that kind of stuff. So they know what we're trying to accomplish, and they're gonna give us a lot of tools, or they're gonna apply a lot of tools to answer these things.
I'm assuming that the RFP was put on the website.
Yep.
Those things usually are. So is there a way for us to be emailed the winning contractor's response to the RFP?
Sure, and they're in my office. They're a pretty
Okay.
big booklet. You can look at all 4 of them if you like.
So thinking ahead on this, after this is said and done, we act on it. This would need to be acted on prior to the Durkee Street development. I mean, you couldn't really start that, shut it down, and not have anywhere to go, at least for the
That's
interim.
right.
So you'd have to have this.
That's right. A lot of simultaneity involved. We have to have this kind of resolved before we can say to the developer in Durkee Street, yeah, we got the whole parking thing figured out. You guys go ahead and figure out your thing.
Whereas the development on Durkee Street would need to be a definite go ahead. Otherwise, we could end up with 2 parking places that aren't
Right.
being utilized.
Right.
I mean, if we did something elsewhere and then something went amiss there.
Right. I would expect that the contract's gonna give us a whole series of options too. But I do want one of those options to be certainly addressing that whole 360 spots problem. But yeah, it's very tricky, and I was concerned to have this stretching out so far, because we've already had some interest in people who might want to do something in Durkee Street, but that's of course the very first thing they ask. We have to have a pretty good answer to that question before we can put that RFP out. So that's why I'm anxious to keep this moving on.
And I think one item I would imagine they'll look at that is the Clinton County parking lot for employees. That
Right.
is very underutilized.
Yep.
There's usually about 48 spaces daily empty. They
Mhm.
took away taxable property to put that in there,
Mhm.
and yet it's quite underutilized.
There's, I've identified 3 groups that we have to address for the parking situation. One is the evening residents, who their landowners are actually the ones paying into the parking fund, obviously. And that's primarily evenings, 7 days a week. Then there's weekends, the tourists who come in that we want to enjoy the downtown. And then there's the downtown businesses, their employees, their shoppers, and Clinton County Division of Social Services for the daytime 9 to 5 kind of 5-day-a-week kind of crowd. So it's 3 entities. One is really related to DRI and our economic development and our tourism. The other is Clinton County, and they should have some sort of responsibility in working towards a solution, because we're trying to produce parking for their employees too. And the other is a city hall or city problem with regard to the parking fund and the tenants that are, or landlords are paying into this. So I would like to have a discussion between all 3 of those groups, DRI, city, and county, to resolve what would probably end up being a pretty expensive solution.
And I think there might be a 4th population to consider, from what I'm understanding, is when the people who work downtown and they leave for the day, they come back to park in the parking lot, then the nighttime crowd is here because of the growth of restaurants, et cetera, downtown.
Mm-hmm.
So they're finding when they return to the parking lot that a lot of it's being taken with 3 or 4 hour parking situations, and they're not being freed up. So that's also maybe something that should be considered.
Yeah.
As well as perhaps there's a walking problem as well as a parking problem too, so, all right.
And the consultants, they address that. They will do kind of studies for the different clienteles that use that park. They'll even look for 24 hours and watch who's parking where for what reason, and kind of get a snapshot for all those various groups for us and give us some analysis on that.
And the parking lot revenues were, in February, I just had the annual budget. Why are they so high? It's like a 35%. I mean, we had a recreation complex of 16.67% revenue increase, and parking lot revenue is just going.
Or you're looking at the budget that Richard can talk about?
Well,
I
the
think that's a
revenues and
timing issue.
expenditures for just 216 is just one I happen to have, and it's just right to the top of the chart. Parking lot revenues.
That's a special assessment district taxes that are collected January through July. They always are way ahead of the expenditures.
So there is some question as since the expenditures are down, why are they paying still so much?
It's not so much
Well,
the expenditure
expenditures
down,
aren't
it's a timing issue.
necessarily down. What you're
Yeah.
looking at is a full year's worth of revenue there and a half year's worth of expenditures.
The revenues come in early in the year, and the expenditures spread out through the entire year, so it's kind of a lag thing. As you get to the end, more to the end of the year, those lines start converging. I think is what Richard's saying.
Because there is some concern from those who do pay into that.
The surplus there was $27,000 last year.
Out of about $100,000 of collected revenue.
85,000 is the special assessment district revenues between downtown and the old parking lot.
And the DPW, is there an item provided downtown through that? Or is that a separate?
The downtown cleaner is budgeted there.
But not from there? Or
Pardon me?
is the
The
downtown?
expenditures for the downtown cleaning person, you know, who empties the trash, cleans the
Right,
parking
right.
lots, does whatever, yeah, they're budgeted there. As
Okay.
far as DPW's plowing expenses, they're not.
Okay, and is that also covering the marina?
No.
Okay, so they're not part of the program? So they have no benefit from the cleaner?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
That's not part of the special assessment
Right,
district.
right.
Now, I wanna look and see if this county parking lot you're talking about is part of that. I know the county does pay special assessment district taxes.
Yes.
The county building, but I wanna see if that lot you're talking about.
The
I'll
L
look
shape,
that up. So,
Richard, if we have time, would you like to talk a little bit about your July 31 budget closing figures that Councilor Dowdell's referring to?
In a nutshell, the results look positive. All funds seem to be accumulating a surplus against last year's expenses year to date. I forget the exact numbers, but I believe the general fund's about 300,000 ahead.
Net of that recent healthcare increase that we saw,
Yeah, that's
300,000.
I just had a $125,000 healthcare bill hit for the first week in August, and that's not in those results. You know, it's early yet, still,
Mhm.
way too early to say whether this is, you know, a terrific trend or whatever. It's positive so far. We're spending less than last year at this time, which is encouraging.
Will that 125, will that show up in the weekly expenditure, or where does that show up?
It'll show up in August results. It's been booked already for August.
But just as a weekly expenditure? Simply
We
because
pay
it,
the healthcare bills every week.
Okay.
We pay a weekly amount each week.
right,
And it just so happens we got a very large bill for
okay.
the first payment in August, unfortunately.
So we're gonna see a large in comparison.
The healthcare, you know, it's like this. It was raised
Right,
in
but it's
July.
gonna be like
All of a
this
sudden, the
too.
first billing in August, bang, 125,000 for 1
Okay.
week.
I thought, okay. Thanks.
But we'll know more by the end of August if that trend is negative in August for the healthcare. Or if they just one bad week,
Okay.
so.
So right now, we're trending about 2.5% better, which is a good thing. I don't think the two retirements in police, the separation cost for sick leave have been pulled out of there yet, have they? So we might be maybe 1.5% trending better. Be trending better than worse. Maybe the end of the year, I'd estimate we're 200,000 or 300,000 ahead. That'd be great. Keep our fingers crossed.
The first one of those police separation costs are in this week's payroll. You see the numbers in the payroll report. That's part of the weekly, what we call the weekly sheet.
One more thing on parking too. You might ask, well, why doesn't the DRI pay for this since it's so intricately involved with DRI? we asked that question explicitly because we actually had this grant and this in mind before DRI was approved. They wouldn't cover it, but we were prepared to pay it anyway because we were trying to get this whole thing going.
That was one of a few things we had under control, is that correct? Turkey Street, beach, a few other things.
Yeah, who turned off the air conditioning?
We did so we could hear.
Okay.
You want to turn it back on?
Yeah, go ahead, because we don't want you to hear us. Well, how's that?
Oh, are they gonna,
Be hearing weevils, seeing weevils?
never mind, Michelle, they turned it back on.
Okay.
Just thought we were gonna,
Roast.
That's got a very hearing weevil. What? Here's a weevil.
Would anybody like to offer any council reports at this time? About 10 minutes left.
I can give a beach update.
Okay.
Bear with me here.
Speak up.
I said, bear with me here. I'll give a beach update.
Did you turn the air
Okay.
conditioner on?
Okay, actually, it's good news. Through the end of July, year to date, we have taken in $30,701 in revenue. Still down from last year at the same point. 2016 was $33,218. So we're approximately $2,500 off from last year's numbers, which is a significant improvement over my last report. This past weekend, Saturday and Sunday, were the two largest single days in decades at the beach. As a result of the work of Steve Peters with the Adirondack Coast Visitors Bureau in the Summerfest activity. As Steve wrote, they closed the gap on the deficits significantly from the poor weather that we have suffered. He's certainly encouraged and thinks that we will recover nicely by as the summer progresses, as long as our nice weather that we've had in recent days continues. Anything else, Steve, that you want to add to that report? Or?
No, you covered it nicely. Thank you.
One other report that I do have, and this is actually from Councilor Kelly. He asked me just to, as a member of the Budget Committee, I guess, or Finance Committee, or whatever it is that we're called at this point, that he would like to begin having meetings regarding the budget in the very near future. He's appreciative of you, Mayor, for getting the budget to us earlier. than required. And he would like the council, he would like to begin holding meetings either after our regularly scheduled meetings in the very near future.
That'd be on Thursday nights rather than
Yes.
Tuesday nights?
Yes. I believe so, but he's open, certainly. He just wanted to let fellow counselors know that he'd like to begin working on it soon.
And these would be presumably hearings, actually, where you're doing your due deliberations for the budget.
Yes,
So that would be all in attendance, all the councilors in attendance.
be open meeting.
Terrific. Any other reports? I'd like to indicate to you all some progress we made as we're looking over the budget, and I think we're up to a list of about 32 different things that we're exploring or would like to explore. Probably many of them can't happen for this year's budget, but certainly for next year's budget. Many of them on the side of revenue enhancements. One of the things that you all asked us to explore was to join the 21st century in electronic payment for MLD, etc. Got some good news to report. This is something that Chamberlain Marks has been pushing with Munis for a long time and not getting all that far. He's recently shaken them up to encourage them to give us that facility, so they've rejigged the program, and we may be able to start using auto withdrawal from checking accounts the next month or two. So that's I think great news. That information will go directly into Munis. We'll save in a lot of staffing time with that. Presumably, he's got an understaffed office as it is, so I'm sure he would appreciate having that additional staff time to do other things as well. So this is something I know he's been working on for years and years and years, so it's really come at a timely moment. We're also looking and exploring credit card solution. This will be simply automatic withdrawal on the due date for your MLD bill. It'll automatically come out of your checking account. It won't be at any cost to either the city or the customer at all. There's not going to be any surcharge associated with it as well. So I think it's going to be a pretty popular feature.
It doesn't just have to be automatic withdrawal, does it? I mean, can it be selective? Go and pay?
The customer would have to sign up for the service online, and what we've been waiting for, believe it or not, to be able to do this, is for Munis to put in a development change that would block the broadcasting of the customer's bank account information and routing information in an email that we didn't want circulated in the first place. So they finally figured out a way to mask that, and it's a feature that's been just deployed July 21st, so that we can now say, please mask the customer's bank information. Because what we had suggested is, well, if we can't mask it, we'll send the email to Munis, and they can protect the customer's bank information and figure out a way to make sure it's secure and not hacked, through the internet or through the cloud. So anyway, now that email comes out and says the customer is signed up, the bank account information is blanked out. That customer will still either get a paper invoice or they can be an e-billing customer, which gives them until the due date to decide whether or not to have it debited out of their account. If they want to call us and say, please don't do it. If there's some kind of a
So you can choose either an automatic withdrawal or authorize each individual payment.
Sure.
And you can with everything else.
Yeah, you can go online still and do an e-check for 80 cents and authorize what you want to pay.
Are you going to vet the withdrawal with your own checking account first to make sure it's
Sure. Yeah. It's a true automatic payment. A lot of people say I do online banking each month with my bank. I set my payments up and they're paid automatically. Well, the banks still issue checks and send them to us. And they probably do it 2 or 3 weeks after you or you would
Right.
say, set that up for me, so that they can play the float game, transfer your money into their account, keep that cash for 3 weeks, earn interest on it, and then send a check to us. It still takes about how many days to clear. And those checks are some of the toughest ones to clear, believe it or not, when we do them through our automated scanning and depositing each day. So this is true online payments, where you say, I want to debit it right from my account. The people who we call the snowbirds that go to Florida each year have been begging for this.
Sure.
And I think we've had at least 2 to 3 people a week since 2 years ago asking, when are you gonna get that?
Yeah.
How come you guys can't do that? We tell them the stupid story that, you know, their bank account information isn't secure because of sending an email. Well, we've complained about it, and I think a lot of other customers from Munis put the same pressure on them, so that they didn't just issue it as a new release in a future release of the software. They actually went back
Yeah.
3 or 4 versions, and they're installing it across the board. So it's something that we've all been waiting for.
That's excellent. Very happy about that.
Yeah, it'd be great, and it's gonna be easy for a customer to sign up for it, right online. They put their bank account information in, they can confirm it, we don't see it, it's totally secure, encrypted in our system.
I wonder if there will be any reduced late payments because of that,
Could be.
and
Yeah.
non-payments, just because if you have the choice of either mailing it or hiking yourself down there where it's sometimes problematic to park and so forth.
Sure.
drive through. So, I mean, those are impediments to paying your bill on time, I think, especially for people accustomed to paying online.
One of our biggest impediments to people paying their bill on time is we'll get notified that a whole group, maybe 30 or 40 customers didn't get their bills. And we know we've mailed them, we put the tracers on them through the postal system. And we'll say to the post office, what happened? And they'll say, you know, someone probably forgot a bag of mail behind the seat in the car.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what do we do about that? Wait a couple months, it'll show up. So
Yeah.
those kind of things are a problem because people don't get their bill. Well, they won't get the bill in this case, but if they have the direct debit set up, they'll still get paid on time. I'm hoping that we're gonna have the ability to automatically email them, say 5 days before it's gonna be debited, and let them know it's coming out of your account, make sure it's
Yeah.
okay.
That's good.
And there's no fee associated with that, Richard?
Not at all. We get free banking for those things, and the customer doesn't get a fee charged to them for it. So,
Great.
looking forward to finally offering that service. And we'll make sure it works with our own accounts before we put it out to the public.
Thank you.
Also yesterday, Chamberlain Marks detected a really sophisticated online scamming scheme that with regard to wire transfers that wasn't successfully detected in a downstate school board, and they ended up losing millions of dollars, and Richard detected it yesterday. So we're not a victim to hackers, but we've got the controls and the diligence in place to prevent them from taking advantage of it so far. So thank you, Richard, for being so aware of this.
Carol Garcia was instrumental too. We commiserated on this, and it's like, this doesn't look right. And, you know, she said to me finally, what do you think we're gonna do with this? And I said, I don't know. She said, why don't you call the mayor and see if he's really sure about this? At least find out what we're gonna be paying for. And that's when you said, hey, I don't know what you're talking about, I think we're being scammed. So it was $86,000 that someone was asking us to transfer. And they're basically posting themselves as calling reader emails. Impersonating. Look pretty official too.
They weren't from a Nigerian prince? They weren't from a Nigerian prince?
Couldn't tell.
Why, is she a scam?
Sorry, Dale.
It was just another day at the office. It was, you know, it was fun.
Any other reports before we begin then? So let's call the meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Counselor Armstrong?
Here.
Counselor Kelly? Counselor Dowdle?
Here.
Counselor Ensel?
Here.
Counselor Casper?
Here.
Counselor Kretzer?
Here.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on July 27th, 2017 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong and seconded by Councilor Ensel. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending August 2nd, 2017 in the amount of $556,159.69 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kretzer and seconded by Councilor Dowdle. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the reports as listed are hereby ordered, received, and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Dowdle and seconded by Councilor Armstrong. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the bills audited by the common council for the week ending August 4th, 2017 in the amount of $348,886.10 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Dowdle, seconded by Councilor Ensel. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. This is the opportunity in our meeting to ask any members of the public residents of the city of Plattsburgh to please come forward and address the council. There's a 5-minute time limit we'll ask you to stick to, and at this time we'd like you to come and address any issues that are on the agenda for tonight. We will have another public comment period at the end of the meeting for any of your concerns for the council. Seeing none, could we continue?
Motion to remove item 7A from the table.
Moved by Councilor,
I think we want to keep it on the table.
okay.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the city chamberlain to approve a budget transfer of $2,800 with the municipal building accounts to cover the unbudgeted cost of a defibrillator, cleaning supplies, and exit lighting and signs for City Hall.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong and second by Councilor Kretzer. Discussion, please. Seeing none, roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the city chamberlain to approve a budget adjustment of $1,000 for the revenue recovery of an insurance deductible and for the appropriation of partial replacement cost of a police vehicle destroyed in an accident.
Moved by Councilor Dowdle, second by Councilor Ensel. Discussion, please. Seeing none, roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
This next item, we introduce local law P2 of 2017. You've got some information, additional information in front of you. This is to follow through with one of the resolutions from last week to simply ask for a hearing on this matter. And we would set the hearing date for 2 weeks from today, presumably?
We'll stagger the dates, 5 o'clock, 5:01, 5:02 for each one.
Okay, so you'll see a number of, these are bookkeeping to make sure the charter is consistent with the resolutions, and we'll set them beginning at 5 o'clock on Thursday, August 17th. Next item, same housekeeping for local law P3 of 2017, local law repealing chapter 48 and 82, amending chapters 233, 36, 41, 53, and 257, 270 of the city code of the city of Plattsburgh. And I'd like to set a hearing date to follow 1 minute after the 5 o'clock hearing date on Thursday, August 17th. Next item, again, a local law P4 of 2017, local law amending Article 5, Section C5-3 of the City Charter, City of Plattsburgh, to set for 5:02 on Thursday, August 17th. And next is local law P5 of 2017, also in front of you. It's the local law amending Article 6, Section 1, C6-1 of the City Charter, the City of Plattsburgh, again for Thursday, August 17th. at 5:03. Next item?
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves the City of Plattsburgh parking study be awarded to proposal number P3-17-124, Carl Walker, Inc., for the total amount of $57,684. The Empire State Development Reimbursement Grant Award is for $20,000, and funds will be advanced from the parking fund until ESD grants funds are received, at which time that advance will be repaid. The remaining portion will be matched by the City of Plattsburgh to be drawn from the parking fund.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, second by Councilor Dowdle. Discussion, please. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kreutzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves the City Chamberlain to amend the 2017 parking lot fund budget by an increase in estimated revenues and appropriated fund balance totaling $60,000 and an increase in contracted services of $60,000 to provide funding for the 2017 downtown area parking study.
Moved by Councilor Kreutzer, second by Councilor Ensel. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kreutzer?
Yes.
There's no travel requests at this time, and no resolutions for initial consideration at this time. Any new business and additional councilor reports, please?
I guess I can just say that having met with the Snow Removal Advisory Committee, I believe our last meeting was in May, and I think I reported to you that they were ceding responsibility for further discussion about the existing local law to the council. And so I wondered if there was any interest in discussing this anytime soon, probably before the snow season. But anyway, it's just a reminder, and you can contact me if you have any thoughts about the existing law and its controversial fine. Okay.
It's very easy to let that get away from us, and then all of a sudden, the first snowfall, you
Yeah.
become instantly aware
Yeah.
of it. So.
Well, I mean, the committee has always recommended that there be a pretty thorough public relations campaign, you know, from their very first recommendation, to inform the public about whatever the existing law was and what the requirements were in order to comply. So that's part of what I hope can be accomplished for the future.
There's something else that we need to discuss, which is the paving stone on
Mhm.
Yes.
we got to talk about that too. So there's several things that we need
Yeah.
to put out for discussion.
Thanks, Becky.
Any other items? People are expecting us to go at least 3 hours tonight after last week.
I'd like to see a show of hands on that one.
This is the opportunity for any members of the public to please come forward and discuss with the council any issues of concern to you.
Good afternoon. Steve Peters, Superintendent of Recreation. Want to make a couple of things clear right off the bat. I understand very clearly what the vote was last week to eliminate my position. And I know I've got just basically, at best, a few months left. And as you can imagine, that's been pretty disappointing for me. There's been many successes under my leadership in this department. We've quadrupled user days at the beach. We've increased the usage at the rec center 5-fold, doubled the amount of teams in our indoor programs at the civic center, initiated a multitude of new events and programs designed to make our community a better place through healthy options, physical activity, pride for the region, and worked on various tourism initiatives that the Visitors Bureau can throw our way. So, in short, we've been a department working on the cutting edge of our future, working on improving the quality of life for not just the city, but for the region. And, I believe we can be a city, a better city and a better recreation department. But I also don't believe that it can be done through cutting services, though I also understand that that's happened. So I vow to stay on as long as I can, as long as I'm able to work with the community to ensure, to the best of my ability, that any transition or future planning can take place with limited impact. That's important. Though I do honestly have very strong concerns that we can do that with limited impact. Thus, I'm here as the city's advocate for the future of recreation and recreation planning, and it is with that role that I address you today. So on the agenda today is the mayor's announcement to hold a public hearing for a number of new local laws, specifically where it relates to the rec department. Law P2 repeals city code language that creates the recreation department. That was from the 60s, though this department actually has been active and official since even the 40s and prior to that. Local Law P4 changes the city charter to remove the recreation department. And this specifically is of grave concern to me and should be of concern to the community. It's imperative that the public's aware that this very charter went through an exhaustive democratic and public process not very long ago, less than 18 months. In 2015, it was overwhelmingly approved at almost 80% in favor of it in a public referendum, meaning the voting public voted on this document. And so, you know, to me, the charter is the Constitution of the city. It's no less important than the Constitution of the United States, really, but it's only relating to our city. And this is why there was a referendum and a public vote to establish the community's expectations of its own government. That's really what it is. A vote to overturn the demands of the public in a few weeks, or that hearing, makes that charter commission and public referendum really, really pointless. And I struggle to see the value in that because the public has put that out there. And it's important that their voice had been heard. So I implore you to consider that the public voice has already been heard and that it should be honored when that vote comes out. Throughout this process, there's been extensive comparison to other cities in New York State. With good reason, compares us financially and based on size and a lot of things, and it's helped shape our fiscal policy here. But there's another trend that I think is really important here, that of all the cities in New York State, 92% of them have recreation departments. They turn to that department to work on the quality of life of the region, to continue to make it a better place, to provide options for children and adults. And those are the things that we've done in this department. Now, I recognize that there's also a lot of rhetoric about not losing services with all these changes. And as per the mayor's directive, it's my responsibility at the moment to try to guide and help the best that I can as long as I'm here, the 6 of you who now have the responsibility of working on the budget. And so I take that seriously, and I'm holding my head high to kind of work through that, to transition myself out of employment here. Kicking and screaming maybe, but you know, certainly that's what I'm doing, okay, and I understand that. So it's my task to assist you with that, and in looking at the budget so far, and I understand that the timelines that we're on are imperative that we move with the correct information forward as best as we can. And so I spent a lot of time over the weekend, in the evenings, over the week looking at the budget, understanding what may have gone where and how things have been adjusted. And I'm still working on, you know, confirming how that all kind of played out and then how that may affect operations. And so as I address you today, it's with that kind of perspective that you should know what we're looking at. So right now that I can tell, there's an elimination of 3 union positions. I'm sure that was inadvertent, but it's there. And so I don't believe that that was the mission when it was set out to make the adjustments, but there are 3 positions that I don't see where they are in the budget right now, and that's important. A partial list of the things that are not being included. Parks cleaning supplies, toilet paper, porta-johns, a mandatory trail encroachment lease with the railroad for the bike path, half of our copy machine, the lease for the copy machine, half of our lease of our software, which is indispensable to schedule all the games and all the things that are out on the fields. Safety and first aid supplies, referees and umpire fees for some youth sports out in our fields. Field paint, diamond dry, infield mix, grass seed, replacement netting, fuel for our vehicles, repairs to our vehicles, repairs to equipment, ASCAP fees, which allows us to play music publicly and respect the artist and make sure they have some compensation. Some employ phone lines and employees that are still going to be employed. Union guaranteed footwear and uniforms, things like that. That's not an exhaustive list, but those are the things that you're going to have to consider putting back in before we move forward. You've eliminated 2 managers, I'm one of them, but yet to be addressed in the budget are the who's going to hire, fire, train, schedule, discipline, lifeguards, clerks, and laborers. The contracts for rentals, insurance, event production, facilitation at both the Crate Civic Center and the City Beach, policy creation and enforcement, water testing, ensuring overall safety, scheduling activities, leagues, referees. Those things can only be done in a very limited capacity as it currently stands. So those have to be considered. Please bear in mind, we're a 7-day-a-week, 14, 15-hour day operation, 461 days a year, across multiple venues. To put that in the hands of one of my good friends and very capable grant writers, and Paul D. Dominicus, in the Community Development Office, doesn't really allow that necessary quality of life that our taxpayers deserve. It severely diminishes your capacity really to provide for the taxpayers. The staff is not going to be there to capture the budgeted revenue that's in there. I couldn't say to what degree, but it could eventually be more costly than what you're saving. As I mentioned, I'm still trying to understand what items are moved and which ones are cut, but right now, here's what I gather, and that there's $58,000 in salary and benefits that were cut, $132,000 in salary benefits from Rec Complex, $44,000 in parks maintenance, which is a total of $234,000. It's as best as I could figure with what I've seen so far. So what this currently does is it takes that taxpayer who has a median home value of $143,000, makes their investment in the recreation department go from $51 to $34 annually. And what that amounts to is right now we've saved that median taxpayer about 5 cents a day with all of that. So I want to make sure that information's out there. And I want to make sure that you understand that I'm here to help and make this process as smooth as I can, and that I hope you treat me as a resource as we go forward and do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, we'll certainly look into that, I appreciate it. Any other individuals who'd like to come, please address the council.
Hi, I'm Luke Cyphers. I live at 160 US Oval. I was the chair of the City of Plattsburgh Charter Revision Commission. And I wanted to reiterate what Steve talked about in terms of the will of the people of this city and the work that the dozen members of the Charter Commission put in to reflect that will. We, in devising and revising the charter, wanted to simplify it, and we wanted to strip it down to make it a much more readable document, which I think it is. It's much handier to find stuff in the charter now than it was. So yeah, I'm patting myself on the back, and my colleagues. But we also wanted to crystallize some things. And some of those things were what the core functions of the city should be. And among those core functions was recreation. We put in an early report from a subcommittee and in our final report that these core functions, which we called expected services, were to remain part of the function of city government. I'm worried that by willy-nilly deciding to revise the charter, especially given the information that Steve just presented, that some of those core functions of recreation are going to go away. And that the will of the people, 78% of the people voted for this charter just a year and a half ago, will be completely ignored. What I'd like to see is for people to take a breath here. First of all, to respect the process of what the commission and what the voters went through to arrive at that charter. It was extensive. We had 9 months of meetings and hearings and reports. Some of you here even showed up for some of them. Some of our honored members of the media lived there with us while they were covering the Dannemora escape, by the way. There was plenty of information out there. We made a point of being as open and democratic as possible, and people spoke loudly. They liked the charter revision, 78% to 22%. I'm worried that in an atmosphere of panic, this council, the city government's just going to undo that and leave themselves open to perhaps legal challenges down the line. But even barring that, taking away the will of the people here who expected this core function. I would put toilet paper as an expected service. If that's really not being accounted for now, you have to slow down. There's a problem here with this process. So I'm actually pleading with you to really think hard about your votes in the coming weeks. I know you have an insanely difficult job to get this budget together. But budget crises do come and go. The city charter is supposed to be a fairly permanent document that you work off of. And so I'm asking you all to really consider deeply, and with the attention to detail that our commission gave to the city, unpaid by the way, to try to make things function smoothly. Right now, what I'm seeing doesn't seem to be a smooth process. All I got.
Thank you, Luke.
I was not all that pleased with the how the charter changes came about and what happened there. Most people, as I did, saw it as a referendum on whether we had a city manager or didn't. It lumped so many things together. It wasn't like you could pick and choose, like this was a really great way to go or not. I didn't think it was any great changes in there at all. I wasn't impressed, and I think most people didn't understand what it was, what the charter changes were all about, and you had to vote on 50 different items. If you didn't like 10 of them, so what? I don't think it was an overwhelming referendum on part of the people to say, I liked all those changes. They didn't know what they were voting on, just as I didn't. All I knew was we were going to stick with the same thing, and supposedly it was just cleaning up the language and whatever. It's a living document. And they did make changes, and they're looking at making changes now. What's wrong with that? Things change. You have to roll with the punches. You have to keep making good decisions. The city is broke. I don't know how many times I have to say that, where people are going to understand it. Some people do understand it now, that we have to make drastic changes. It's not that we want to hurt people or that anybody wants to make anybody lose a job or any of that. But if the city goes broke, and I see people say, well, I don't mind paying more taxes. Well, I'll tell you what, they can come in here and donate money to the city. I do not want to pay more taxes. The taxes are 3 times higher than where I lived before. I do not think they need to be higher. I'm sorry, I'm not really trying to pick on anybody, but I know you people understand because you've been looking at the numbers, but not everybody understands that yet, that the city is in really tough financial straits. We need to do something. We need to move forward. And I think everyone is on board with that now. It's not pretty, it's not the way we want to go, but we have to do something. And I'm glad you people are doing something. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Also, to alleviate any of your concerns, there were 2 co-chairs for the charter committee, and we have been consulting with the other co-chair. He actually shared this within the packet that I keep for you to see all the various supporting documents for these various decisions. But that co-chair did stress to me that the charter committees discuss these issues in quite a length, especially as it relates to the mayoral and city manager model. And they determined that there's essentially 3 categories that we need to preserve, and it very much harkens to discussions we had about 6 months ago with regard to the jointness of public safety, fire, police, and code enforcement. As you may recall, the charter committee at that time said that there should be a public safety umbrella to ensure that the citizens of Plattsburgh are protected for fire, police, and building inspector. They had another kind of super department they defined that would oversee public works, water, sewer, transportation, power, MLD, etc. And they had another that includes library, arts, recreation, and parks, of which some of this discussion was referring to. Now, this co-chair also pointed out to me that they did have a statement they contemplated that in lieu of providing any of these services through city departments, offices, or agencies, the city may arrange with other governments and entities such as the town of Plattsburgh or County of Clinton, public agencies, or the Plattsburgh City School District to either provide or share such services. So they did anticipate in these charter deliberations that these sorts of consolidations over time would naturally occur. They simply merely wanted to state that it's our obligation to ensure that somehow these services are provided to our public. And I'll make every single effort, as I discussed with Department Head Peters, to ensure that these recreation programs are delivered with the services and level of expertise that our citizens are accustomed to. And I trust that we're going to work very effectively over the next few months to ensure that that's the case. It's very important. If there's corrections in the budget that the Chamberlain has to make, he's certainly going to correct them to make sure that we're not shortchanging the public on their expectations for these services. So I think that this is part of a healthy discussion. I think that some of this has been anticipated in the Charter Commission itself, and I just want you to feel free to come and look through these documents as you see necessary for all the various backing materials that went into these decisions. Any other individuals like to come forward? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn tonight? So moved by Councillor Kretzer, second by Councillor Renzel. Roll call.
Councillor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councillor Dowdle?
Yes.
Councillor Renzel?
Yes.
Councillor Casper?
Yes.
Councillor Kretzer?
Yes.
Thank you, folks, for coming.
You guys whispering about it there.